So it's 11:11 and welcome. Welcome to our multi presentation. So this is protection against vehicle attacks. And so we have here joint project of the Police Crime Prevention and the Crime Prevention Research Units. So we can say that actually so that we wanted to start the development of measures and this prevention is actually then something that we started in 2016 to develop all the different protection measures in order to protect people against vehicle attacks. And so we have Yulim Christianim that works, of course, then in the protection against vehicle attacks. And then we have also Mr. Christian Weicht, he's also then a consultant as a freelance consultant, and he deals also with particular security topics, and he's also then working at the Technical University of Cottbus-Senftenberg. And for myself, I am a police scientist and Detlev Schürmann is my name, and I've also done a retired policeman, and I'm also working at the Chair Architecture and Visualization at the Brandenburg University of Technology with a particular then focus on the security. So about some of the agenda, so we'd like to ask please all the participants to keep their microphone off, and the presentation is going to be recorded by the TV team, and then this presentation will be also available online. After the presentation, there will be then a short break in order to switch to the the presentation. The title will be Making Strong Women Visible. So this is very important topics. Then it will be at 12 o'clock another 30-minute discussion about all the different questions that arose during these two presentations. Actually, this debate will be not recorded. We would like to ask you to keep then your microphones on and then the cameras on for the discussion. Now we can start with a real presentation. So as we have an agenda that I'm going to show you very quickly. So you can see all the different items of the agenda, and so you can see then how the presentation has been then made. So we can say that as I mentioned before, we started with the 2016 with the terrorist attack on the Weicht Christmas market in Berlin, and then 2017. Then we had then all of the different topics that we developed with the initiative Stiftung Deutsches Forum, so which means that German Forum for Crime Prevention. So then we started then to have an inventory of possible protection measures nationally and internationally, and then we have also then all different reactions of the municipalities, and also then of all the other different stakeholders, and it's a network initiative through kickoff event, and it was appointment to the IMK Black protection of public spaces against vehicle attacks. And then also something that took place in Berlin, and that we had also then the invitation to different experts, and because of the place of this event in Berlin, so we really wanted to have the particular involvement of all the different stakeholders to analyze the different aspects, and then the same In the same year, so as I said, so there was also a particular working team that was then appointed to protection of public spaces against vehicle attacks. So they dealt with the traffic and also security. And then in the same year, we'll have the development of a project draft and presentation to the BMI, and then in 2019, in summer, we had a BMI founding approval. So mobile vehicle safety barriers and the transfer of project responsibility from the German forum to the BTU Cottbus-Senftenberg. And this was, of course, the precondition in order to keep on with the work. And then we have to say that in 2019 autumn, the kickoff DIN meeting, mobile vehicle security barriers, and appointment to the KPK project group, urban design and burglary protection. And then 2020, foundation of the research area, applied crime prevention and accompanying scientific research at the chair of architecture visualization at the BTU. 2021 spring, publication of the mobile vehicle safety barriers for safety requirements, part 1, requirements, test methods, and performance criteria. 2021 summer kickoff meeting, part 2, requirements for planning for access protection for the use of tested vehicle safety barriers. And then we started then in 2021 in autumn with the publication of the handout of the public product lists by the police. And then we have publication also of the NIS spec part 2. And then so we can say that we had actually the pyro work that was carried out because so we had two different publications that were converging. And then we can say also that we had at the end a very important report that was absolutely essential for both applications. And then we can say that after the part 2 publication in 2022 in autumn, so we went over to the 2022-2023 roadshow. This was information of the expert public at trade fairs, also conferences, and then also the congresses. This was absolutely very important in order to show this security package and at the end, so you can have it then an idea more of the way it is built, and also during the presentation you can see also then the handout that is going to be described by our colleague Julia Christiani. Thank you very much. Okay, now I'm a presenter of this presentation. Welcome. My name is Julia Christiani. I'm working at the police station for the federal state, as we heard by my colleague. So we talked about, we had a handout, so a handout about protection against vehicle attacks. It was a guideline for the autonomous development of strategies to protect against so-called vehicle attacks with multi-lane vehicles. And so we had then very different possibilities, and we think that in this way, so we wanted to understand how we can identify a public space that can be in danger, and what can be then protected, so which means how can these spaces and what spaces can be protected on long term. We know from the practical terms that these vehicle attacks cannot be protected, cannot be avoided just with police support. So, which means that we had to ask also the municipalities to develop a concept so that it could be useful in order to prevent such vehicle attacks. As Mr. Schürmann just said, so we have crime prevention agencies So in 2021, it was already the publication of a handout about the protection against vehicle attacks, and this guidebook, this handout entails all the different information, all the different advice in order to protect from vehicle attacks. And I'm going to show you all the details about this handout in general. So, as I said, the guideline entails the roles and responsibility of the responsible stakeholders. So it entails concept in 6 steps about access protection, and it also entails a hazard assessment grid for systemized hazard analysis based on checklist, and it has also information on test procedures, guidelines, standards, and product selections. And we have then on top of that some examples on an access protection concept. So this is what we did about the protection against the vehicle attacks. So that this topic was particularly deep dived. So we can say we had then also this checklist and the risk assessment grid can be find also then on the www.polizeiberater.de website. But you have also then a printed handout for form for filling out on the screen. And then we can talk about and then the possible recipients of this handout. So we can say that there's local government officials responsible for planning at local level. They can be the members of the local committees, employees of planning, civil engineering, transport authorities, and approval authorities. Let's say that then chapter number 1. So we have also description of responsibility and roles of the different stakeholders. And the roles stakeholders are involved from the municipality or the city to event organizers, fire brigade, and police, so that their cooperation can work. So it's very important that we know all the different responsibilities. And so the overall or risk managers will have to determine whether protection concept is to be developed and in what form access protection is to be implemented. This absolutely of paramount importance. So we have to understand that this depends, of course, on the different conditions and on different impacts. For responsibility for public spaces, cities and municipalities planning sovereignty to increase safety through structural changes. However, risk responsibility can also be transferred to the organizers, for example, for the events. Tasks and responsibility for the police, the results from the police service regulation, PDV 100 and 129. This is also very important. The police also plays a very important role in this case, and as you understood, this PDV abbreviation stands for Police Service regulations, and so which means that according to the police advise and support external bodies initiatives by contributing to their knowledge and experience, and thus by mitigating the risk. And this is something that can be absolutely done through different kinds of cooperation. Through this skills, so the police can have then all the different possibilities to assess all the conditions and all the different impacts. So then let's see now the description of the responsibilities and roles. So the different stakeholders, the police can support in the different steps, for example, in the risk analysis, or maybe also then in the crime prevention analysis of the weaknesses or the public spaces, and then we can see that the handout protection against vehicle attacks entails the the definition of the different responsibilities and roles of the different responsible stakeholders. And generally, there are many different stakeholders that are there, and so we can see that all different access protection concepts in six different stages, and we believe that the first step is preliminary considerations, then step 2 is the hazard analysis, which means that we consider all the different parameters that can, of course, then determine and define the hazard, and then we go over then to step number 3, which is the definition of the protection objective. And this protection can also then be carried out through the hazard analysis. Then step number 4, the inclusion of the protection area. So the weak spaces are going to be considered and analyzed, and I think that the local stakeholders are going to play an important role here. And then step number 5, development of protection concept, and of course, so you can see all the different results, and because we think that the vehicle attack protection concept can be then developed through the cooperation of all the different elements. So this is absolutely very important, especially with the inclusion of the protection area. And then finally, step number 6, the selection of the protection systems. So this protection system must be selected, and the efficiency of the implementation of a concept that depends, of course, on the different urban measures, but depends also on the quality of all the different protection systems. The police can, of course, use just verified and checked measures, and this must be, of course, integrated in the urban measures. So this was what I wanted to say about chapter number 2. And then chapter number 3. So we of this handout, we have a hazard assessment grid for a systematized hazard analysis, which means then all the different aspects that are systematized, also then standardized. You can see that on our website, so you see that this criteria can also then implement it, can also integrate it. Before going to the hazard assessment, you have to ask the question, is a protection concept necessary? This is the basis for everything, is the basis for this assessment, so which is a local hazard assessment. First of all, we have to select those public spaces for which risk assessment is to be carried out. The criteria for this include high frequency of visits to the public space, and after selecting the public space for a risk assessment, a separate local risk analysis should be carried out for each of them. And the result of the risk analysis is the basis for the assessment of the necessity of a protection concept. This is something very important. The decisions of the necessity of protection concepts are made by political decision makers and all those who participate in that. This is what I wanted to say about the chapter number 3 of the chapter number 3. I would like to also to give you some other information. So you can see here we have a handout, Appendix A, test procedures, the test guidelines, the technical rules and guidelines for access protection concepts in Germany. And then we have also then some other information on the website. So you can find then protecting public spaces from protecting them from vehicular attacks. You can find then also all this information that can be downloaded from the website, and you can find also the checklist and also then analysis. Yes. So the police recommend vehicle safety barriers tested according to standards. Product list for issuance to responsible persons of cities and municipalities, only downloadable from the police intranet. Extrapol, that's the name of it. You can find here the link here on the slide, and the product lists with additional data on the certification standardization process only for police purposes must be released to third parties for security reasons. This is absolutely something very important. And then on top of that, we have also some special information only for police employees, also in the extra poll. And so we can find all the different information. You can find all the different kinds advice about urban measures. Yeah, this is what I wanted to say about my handout. Now I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Christian Weicht, that is going to talk about the following topic. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much. Welcome from my side. Also, we're going to talk now about what we have done about the DIN spec and mobile vehicle safety barriers for safety requirements. And so we can see that we have the part 1 requirements, test methods, and performance criteria. And so the group of experts thought that there should be more requirements for the mobile vehicle safety barriers vis-a-vis than the fixed ones. So the first thing was the impact test. So we have the technical guideline of the police that we also called mobile vehicle barriers. This is a package that we also developed because this basically for Germany the first guideline that we have experienced, of course based on the national procedures. So then the IOA 14.1 that was then transferred into the ISO. And then we have the PAS 621, which is also a Czech guideline in England, which is basically something that we also do. And then, so with that, it's useless to describe a new impact test if we already have one. And that's the reason for that we wanted to take over this impact test that was already carried out and implemented, and that's why so we had the recreation of this DIN spec that could be then used, and it could be, of course, in line with the different requirements. The second thing, we needed to have a displacement test, and so we have assumed very often that the test vehicle touches the vehicle safety barrier 30 seconds for throttle in lowest gear or loss of grip. So then not displaced more than the vehicle length and no passage created. That's why we said whether this barriers cannot just be tested with an impact test, but then needs also then carried out, and it must be also then in line with the displacement test. That's why so we had all the different requirements that I just mentioned. We defined this test, and we have seen that the barrier must be, of course, the same one that we had for the impact test, and we have seen that, of course, the requirements were different. And so if the vehicle, for example, then is on the movement, and so if you see that actually the barriers is not then pushed away, then the displacement test is okay. Otherwise, the displacement test has failed. So, which means that, of course, needs to be repeated. And so then we can see that very often it's also similar to the impact test. But this is something that was quite difficult because there were some producers that didn't know exactly what to do, but actually then in the end, so that they understood how then this test can be then approved. And then, of course, we have also the manipulation test. So we had a level from 0 to 4. So level 0 is no test. So we decided altogether we needed also to have this manipulation test. So which means that this barrier needs to have some additional requirements. And so we think that we needed to increase the two classes and attack times per class. We did that in Berlin, for example. So, for example, we saw that we had different levels. So we had a different steps. We had from 0 to 4, which means that so there are different possibilities, different kinds of vehicles, and so we had to define not only the two classes, but we had to also to define so the attack times per class. So, which means that so we had to understand according to the application of the barrier, if maybe so we need to have some other requirements if this barriers needed to have manipulation test or not. And this is something that was absolutely very important, especially for the producer of such barriers. Well, the following slide shows us, of course, all the different requirements. So, as Mr. Schürmann just said, so we had requirements for access protection planning for the use of tested vehicle safety barriers. The goal, as we know, we needed to integrate so all the different standards. The first one was already there, but then there was a second one, of course, the one that I call the DIN-SPAC 914142. And so for this reason, so we had to integrate there. However, so I can show you what the objective was, the goal was, and this is something that we have already then defined in our business report. But I can say just that the goal was to integrate the contents of the handbook into a standardized procedure. So, which means that the police work needed to be adapted, needed to be integrated, and then we had also to considered if this was good to have a standardized procedure in Germany. And of course, the handouts could be applied to some other cases too. And this was something that worked out very well. And then so we can see that the whole stakeholders were coming from 5 different labs, from the municipalities, the organizers, representatives of the events, etc., etc. So they came all together, and so basically, so that then they were able to integrate the contents on the handout. That's why we had the 6 different steps, and the steps very often are going to be like that and stay like that for the future as well. And everybody that is dealing with the security concept will know that I cannot avoid this 6 points, 16 steps. So, for example, all the different protection goals, protection objectives, so that everything is very well coordinated. And so everybody that is participating in this kind of protection measures needs, of course, to stick to such steps. This is a standard that is particularly important. And then, of course, so we have to consider also the different urban safety standards as well. So we had a different security procedures that were developed at those times when we developed the handout, and it had also a particular impact on this concept. So these are maybe then service procedures for security, different security concepts that are already valid. Or maybe then alarm systems, then parameters, protection systems, and so on, and all of that, is going to be then very important. And we think that these standards need to be complied with, and since they're already there, so they are going to be integrated as well. Then a third item, third step, so something that was integrated also into the police handout is the qualification, the security levels, and also the documentation. And this is also something important because this is something that we really wanted to do together with the others. So for example, if we wanted to understand how we could further improve that. And then there are also then some other procedures that could be integrated that were also related to qualification. But then we have also the structure of a security concept that need to be integrated. So the risk assessment, protection goal, vulnerability analysis, and recommended security measures. This is something was necessary to integrate because, or will also in the future integrated will be important, necessary as well. So for us, so this was quite important to recognize that the question or the impact on this urban measures needed to be, of course, updated, and that's the reason why. So we have to understand how this could be then work also then in public spaces, and how this could be adapted. And that's the reason why. So we will need a bit more time than we expected. And so we would like to understand what are the possible implementations in different public spaces. So it will be then studies, then researches that will be carried out in order to understand a bit more details in this case. Well, this urban sustainability takes into account also compatibility with the cityscape. And so it's very hard to find situations that are already in line with all the different standards of the protection barriers, which means that in 80% of the different interventions per year, there are particular things that need to be adapted, and there are things, of course, that we needed also to understand. Yeah. So then some other important things that you can find, some other advice that you can find that maybe on the website. So then I think we have completed our topic, and thank you very much for interest in